I've been talking about bamboo for months. In the middle of all the climate and sustainability news, News with Navya started Let's Talk Bamboo, a show dedicated to this incredible resource. Why? Because bamboo deserves global attention. It benefits everyone, from farmers to entrepreneurs, policymakers, and consumers. Now, News with Navya is taking a step further. We are the official media partner for the European Bamboo Expo 2025, happening from May 22nd to 24th in Dortmund, Germany. Now, this event brings together industry experts, sustainability advocates, entrepreneurs, and the public to explore bamboo's potential in climate action, construction, agriculture, textile, food, and rural economies. As media partners, News with Navya will bring you in-depth coverage of the expo, highlighting India's role in the global bamboo market and the growing synergies between Europe and India. Bamboo is being used for everything: pens, straws, buildings, bridges, even airports. But is it really strong? Can it withstand extreme weather? And can one really make money from it? Is it a smart investment? To find answers, I spoke with Friederich, former Director General of INBAR and an ambassador for the World Bamboo Organization. He spent decades working with policymakers, businesses, and farmers to put bamboo on the global map. So, is bamboo really the future? Let's hear it from the expert. You've worked with bamboo across different continents for decades. I want to understand what first sparked your interest in bamboo and what keeps you passionate even today.
Very good question, Navya. I guess if you look at my background, I'm basically a conservationist and yes, a nature expert by training and through my career. I mean, I've worked, as you say, in Africa. I've worked in Asia. I've worked in China, and I'm now working in Europe. And originally, it was mainly nature conservation. I worked with the International Union for Conservation of Nature. And in that discussion, we often talked about nature-based solutions and how we can work with nature to promote sustainable development. And bamboo came up a couple of times. In 2013, was selected as the Director General for the International Bamboo Rattan Organization. Yes. The Director General, which is basically the head of the organization, based in Beijing. And this is the International Bamboo Organization. It's a very interesting organization. It's an intergovernment institution. So it's not something where companies or individuals are members. The governments of states that have bamboo are members. We now have about 50 countries around the world. And India is one of the members. So I was in Beijing, and basically my job was, as the CEO, to promote bamboo. Yeah. So it really became my job to go around the world, to sit in UN meetings. I was the representative of INBAR at the United Nations in New York, because we are a member of the UNGA. And I went to the climate COPs, the biodiversity COPs, and other international meetings to talk about bamboo.
Yes.
I left China in 2019, and I'm now continuing the discussion in Europe. And we'll get to that, I guess. Europe is one part of the world where bamboo is not a natural plant. So there isn't bamboo here, as an indigenous, as a natural vegetation, which causes all kinds of very interesting aspects, because people call it, an Asian plant. And there are, I know we will talk about some of the myths. I mean, there are some weird stories going around here about bamboo. So it's very interesting to promote bamboo in Europe. And that's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm an ambassador of the World Bamboo Organization, and I'm working with a local company that is planting bamboo in Europe.
I think you've mentioned some very important points, and I'd like to talk about them in detail. But before that, what I've understood of bamboo living in India is that bamboo is often called the green steel or the green gold. Given your experience in this space, how do you think bamboo is really proving to be a game changer when it comes to sustainability, climate action, biodiversity, and so much more?
It is indeed. I often call it that as well. I think at the same time, we have to be careful. It's not a silver bullet. We can't change the world with planting bamboo. But I think what is so interesting about bamboo, Navya, is, on the one hand, it's environmental aspects. Bamboo let's be honest, it's not one bamboo. There's about 1,700 different species of bamboo.
Absolutely.
So it's a whole group of plants, and they're all grass species, biologically speaking. So you're talking about fast-growing plants that, as you can see behind me, look like trees. So the environmental aspects are really important. I mean, for soil restoration, for erosion control, for carbon sequestration, all these aspects that are environmental, and for biodiversity. I mean, the Chinese panda, the red panda that lives in India and Nepal, the gorillas in the mist in Uganda, Rwanda, they all live off bamboo, and there are other species. The other side is that, in many, many countries, particularly in Asia and South America, bamboo is part of society, part of the community. People use bamboo. People live off bamboo.
Yes.
They eat it. They build their houses with it. They have utensils. So it's a complete part of society in those countries. And finally, you can make money from bamboo, serious money. And I think we'll talk about that. On the one hand, yes, communities, local livelihoods can live off bamboo, but there are industrial opportunities and actually making big money. And I think, it's one of the things where I think India is not there yet. India can do an awful lot more. We'll talk about that. But I think, therefore, for me, bamboo is really, it's sustainability in one plant. It has the economics, it has the environmental, it has the social aspects.
Absolutely. I think I completely agree with you when you talk about different uses of bamboo. As someone living in India, I do realize that for a lot of states in India, bamboo has been a part of their culture and their traditions and their practices.
Sure.
And as you mentioned, we just need to embrace it more. But I also want to understand, where does this sudden obsession for bamboo stem from? Why is everybody suddenly talking about bamboo?
I wished I could answer that one without question. I think, again, depends where you go. As I say, I lived in China. China makes about 60 billion US dollars worth per year of bamboo. They don't have as much bamboo as India. India makes about 6 billion, I think. There's an awful lot that India could do. But if you say in China, everybody's talked about bamboo for centuries. I think in Northeast India, they have. So what is interesting is that the Western world, I say particularly here in Europe, all of a sudden, bamboo is becoming something people do see as an opportunity. And I think this is all to do with the growing realization that we need to think about nature more, that it isn't all about plastic and steel and glass.
Yes, that's so much more.
Innovation here is turning back almost to nature. And I think, therefore, all of a sudden, there's a lot of talk about bamboo here. That goes into the social media, and that goes into the global discussion. So you're right. I see an awful lot more talk about bamboo, reports about bamboo, and that's brilliant. I like it.
You've spoken about bamboo, as you mentioned, on major global platforms, including the UN. What do you think have been the biggest roadblocks in promoting bamboo, or what really stops bamboo from reaching its full potential? Is it policy, investment, conversation? What do you think it is?
I think it is policy. It's also public opinion. Bamboo in many countries has a bit of a negative image. And again, I'm thinking here, particularly in Europe, there are these stories about people have planted the running bamboo in their garden, a little garden somewhere in the middle of a village. They had no idea. They haven't looked after it. And all of a sudden, the neighbors or the people across the road find bamboo shoots in their garden. They start complaining. It's difficult to get bamboo out of the soil when it's mature. So all of a sudden, you have court cases even. You have debates, you have questions. And therefore, there's that question about bamboo. Is it, does it have problems? I think as a result, at the policy level, again, we're thinking now about Europe, bamboo is still not really understood. And I think part of the problem, even globally, is, as I said earlier, bamboo looks like a tree, but it isn't. And the funny thing is, I found that even in Asian countries, when you talk with foresters, you talk with people from the Ministry of Forestry, they say, well, it's not timber, so we're not really interested in it. When you talk to the Ministry of Agriculture, they say it's not a food crop, so we're not really interested in it. So it sort of falls between two stools almost. And I think that's why it hasn't really been picked up that far. The climate convention is starting to see bamboo as an opportunity. And there are some interesting stories through the Paris Accord in countries that are using bamboo for climate adaptation and climate mitigation.
Yes, absolutely.
I think the one that's certainly not yet convinced is the Biodiversity Convention. And I think, again, the issue there is, as a biodiversity plant, it's not seen that important. And people often forgot what I said earlier, that there are some critical species that depend on bamboo. Again, I think many of the activists, some of the lobbyists have seen bamboo plantations, like behind me, and say it's monoculture and therefore it's bad.
Yes.
And we need to say monoculture is bad in a natural environment where you are thinking about tropical forests.
Yes.
But if monoculture means agricultural development, nobody talks about monoculture when you grow wheat. And we see bamboo plantations here in Europe very much as an agricultural development, not as a natural resource. Again, the original forests in India, in Northeast India, and in China, and in Vietnam, and the Asian countries, and in Latin America, a lot of that is natural.
Absolutely, absolutely.
The plantations, yes, the plantations are often looking like more monoculture because that's what farmers want.
I think you mentioned one very important point. The right awareness when it comes to bamboo is really missing. That's what I've seen, whenever I've interacted with farmers or with entrepreneurs in India as well. They do want to grow bamboo, but they're unaware as to which species really survives in that particular region. And that awareness really needs to come out correctly. Also, you mentioned something about bamboo being associated to Asian countries. And I agree with you. For a very long time, people saw bamboo as an Asian thing. But do you think that perception is changing now?
I think the perception is changing. It's also not true. But I have to admit, Navya, even when I went to China to become the head of this organization, I did not realize how much bamboo there is in Latin America, for example.
Yes.
And the Latin American species are about 3 times as large as the ones you see behind me. The guadua bamboo is almost as big as an elephant's foot. And there is lots of it in Latin America, South America, some of it in Mesoamerica. There is bamboo in Africa. African countries are not using bamboo at all, but there is actually a fair amount. I mean, countries like Ethiopia have more than 1 million hectares. Nigeria, Cameroon, Kenya, Uganda, there is bamboo in the whole center of Africa. It's not really used there. But therefore, I think, again, with the realization of bamboo, what bamboo can do, it's becoming more of a global plant rather than just an Asian plant.
Absolutely. Europe is still quite new to bamboo farming. What do you think are the challenges there when it comes to expanding the bamboo cultivation and the bamboo industry there?
It's what I said earlier. Europe has no natural bamboo. There are bamboos growing in Europe already, but they've all been introduced, and most of them were in botanical gardens or herbariums. And more they're now in nurseries, and they're being sold as individual plants. As I say, problematic in some cases because the nurseries often don't know either, and they just sell a plant because it looks nice, and it turns out to be what we call the running bamboo. And the running bamboo, I say, is not good for a urban environment. Running bamboo is great for agricultural development and for industrial development, but if you have a small garden, a small plot, that's not good. You should have clumping bamboo. And I think, part of the problem, again, is, as you say, awareness raising. I think even the nurseries, the horticulturists, don't often really know which species there are. As a result, the public still doesn't know. Yeah. So it's certainly 10 years ago was considered to be, I say, almost problematic. Again, I think this is changing. I mean, I'm coming from the Netherlands, and I know in the Netherlands, there's an enormous drive at the moment, led by the government, on what they call bio-based building. Yeah. So there are talks about, construction with wood, but the bamboo fits in the wood very, very nicely, particularly for interior design. So for the flooring, for the paneling, for the ceiling, maybe not for the load-bearing construction, but for all the other parts. And therefore, I think all of a sudden, over the last years, it's become more popular. The big challenge is we don't have bamboo in Europe, so we need to plant it, which is why I say I'm working with a company that is promoting bamboo in Europe. So we have our own source. At the moment, all the products in Europe are basically either coming as products or the original pulp or the material comes from Asia. And to be honest, most of that comes from China.
Right. I think you mentioned something about bamboo in construction. And I really want to take this moment to talk about how there are a lot of myths and misconceptions around bamboo and how it's used in construction, even in India. And as part of all the episodes that we've done around construction, a lot of people question the durability and the strength of bamboo. So have you come across any such myths and misconceptions, and how do you think we can tackle them?
Yes, and I think it's very important to also know what kind of construction you're talking about.
Exactly.
I mean, very simplistically, there are two ways of building with bamboo. You can build with the poles, and basically, it's the trees, the poles behind me. You need to treat them because there's a lot of sugar, a lot of carbohydrates in the bamboo, and insects love that. So it has to be treated, and then you can build with it, and it will last for quite a long time if you basically know how to both treat it and maintain it. Bamboo would not grow, would not survive very well if it's open in the sun and the rain. So you have to make sure that the roof covers it a bit. But I mean, there are buildings in Asia that have stood for hundreds of years in some cases.
Absolutely.
And the good thing is that, very often it's built as a meccano almost. So if one pole starts rotting, you can replace it with another one. But that's the sort of, working with bamboo as a pole, and that is particularly suitable for Asian countries in particular, and for Latin America, where bamboo is a natural case. I think in Europe, we're using bamboo in its what is called engineered bamboo form.
Right.
And that's basically, you split the pole into slats. The slats are then glued together. And in doing so, you end up with a beam or you end up with a panel. So all of a sudden, you don't have to deal with the round pole. You can deal with things that engineers understand and that people that work with wood would understand. There's also talk now about a sort of intermediate, and they're looking at, for example, what is called the baharak way of building. That is Latin America, where they use the bamboo as a structure and then they plaster it. One of the advantages of that is this way of it's a traditional building form, really. It's earthquake proof because when there are earthquakes, the bamboo will bend a bit, the bamboo will move, the plaster may fall off, but the building will stand. And we have some experience in Colombia and in Peru where after an earthquake, a lot of the concrete buildings actually fell down, and a lot of these traditional bamboo buildings might have been damaged, but they were still standing.
I agree with you. I think a lot of these stories and a lot of these innovative uses of bamboo, they reach the global audience in the form of videos and social media content, where even as a journalist sitting in India, I can see how bamboo is really transforming things in different countries. And as you mentioned, how it's being used around beaches, cities, where they've survived earthquakes, tsunamis, floods, and so much more. How important do you think storytelling in shifting this global mindset around bamboo really plays a role? Because as someone who's been talking about bamboo for months now, I do realize its potential, and I do realize the kind of responsibility I have to ensure that the global audience is educated about bamboo in the right way. And that's exactly what we do through our show, Let's Talk Bamboo, as well. But I want to understand from you, what do you think the role of the media or storytelling is when it comes to talking about bamboo?
I think it's very important. I think what you're doing, Navya, Let's Talk Bamboo, is fantastic because you're covering really every aspect. I know it's India, and people might therefore say, yes, well, it works in India, but does it work elsewhere? And I think, again, that's where we need the global media to pick up what you're doing and say, well, can we talk about that in other countries?
Absolutely.
So I agree. Stories, videos, photos, they're critical. And I think if we want to influence policymakers, as they often say, a picture says more than 1,000 words. If you can actually show them something that's built from bamboo, show them people that eat bamboo, show them what the bamboo can mean as far as landscape restoration is concerned, they will get the message maybe better than giving them a report that they have to read and they might not be that interested in. So yes, journalism, storytelling, critical. And thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Also, I think another big focus when it comes to our show is on educating farmers and entrepreneurs. Because what I've realized is it's always better to educate a farmer or an entrepreneur about the economic value of bamboo and how it can really help them build a livelihood around it, instead of just telling them that it's good for the environment, because at the end of the day, it has to be economically feasible and viable for them as well. How do you think bamboo can really help in creating jobs and improving livelihoods in different parts of the world?
I think, again, there are so many examples that a bamboo industry has a whole range of stages. I mean, it starts with collecting bamboo. And one of the good things or bad things, because it's seen as a restriction maybe in some European countries, is that you have to harvest bamboo by hand. It's very difficult, in that forest behind me, to go in with a bulldozer because you presumably damage. And the thing is, with the bamboo poles, you want to collect the ones that are 5, 6 years old. They are the strongest ones. You don't want the pole that grew last year because it's still flexible. And you don't want to wait till 10 years because by that time it's no longer a real healthy pole. So basically, it creates an awful lot of jobs simply harvesting. Then you need to clean it. Then you need to, as I said earlier, if you want it for construction, you have to treat it. It has to be taken somewhere. If you say, you use it for paper, for example. I'm thinking of a case that I know of in a district, a very remote district in China, where there are about 10,000 farmers that basically provide the resource for that paper mill. So apart from the harvesting and the collecting, there's then a chipping factory. So there's a whole group of people that are chipping the bamboo in little chips. It then goes into the factory. The factory employs people. So you have that whole series. And then, of course, if you start construction, you create a whole new chain because people will use the construction. Then you get into the sales, you get into the international trade. So if you look at the whole life cycle of a bamboo pole to a bamboo product, there are a lot of people that were part of it, and all of them are making some money.
Absolutely. I think from different industries, from buildings to textiles, especially in India, bamboo is really making its way in so many ways and industries. Which sectors do you think have the biggest potential when it comes to scaling bamboo on a global or a national level?
I think on a global level, the two that really spring to mind for me are construction, because there is so much we can do. And I say it is, that there are discussions. There's whole programs in the Philippines for example. There, the issue is typhoon resilient structures. So basically houses that would withstand the typhoons, which is constantly a problem and is becoming a bigger problem. As I said, there is this whole new world in Europe about the green development and the EU's green agenda that basically promotes construction with bio-based resources, and bamboo would be one of them. So construction, I can see, is a key area. I think the other area is energy. And I know that you've got this energy plant with a Finnish partner in India, which is one of the first. When I say energy, there are many ways. Of course, you can burn bamboo as it is. We've always said charcoal is maybe a good form of creating energy for poor communities, because they don't have to cut trees. They can use the bamboo to make charcoal. But I'm thinking industrial. You're talking about making gas out of bamboo, and certainly, one of the big discussions at the moment with aviation is this whole idea about sustainable aviation fuel. Now, there is research going on, and there are big questions. Could you use bamboo for SAF, for sustainable aviation fuel? Now, you're talking about, the latest of the latest, as it were. So that, for me, energy in all its forms, construction, and maybe there is some research still that can be done in the pharmaceuticals. There's still, I think, a lot of research to be done on possible opportunities using bamboo, extraction of all kinds of components that we haven't done yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think we're still yet to unlock its true potential in different ways. I noticed that you mentioned the words discussion and conversations around bamboo. And I really want to understand, you've worked with policymakers, diplomats, businesses to push for bamboo's role in sustainability and climate action. What are some of the key lessons that you've learned from these conversations, or any highlights that you'd like to share with me?
Again, I think it depends where you are and with whom you talk. It's
Right.
what I said earlier. You talk with people from the forestry world. One of the problems is to convince them that although it's a grass species, it actually has some real value.
Correct.
When you talk with agricultural people, let's say a minister of agriculture will in first instance say, I'm trying to grow food
Yes.
for the population, and I don't see bamboo as a food source. Of course, you could argue, hey, bamboo shoots is a form of food, but it's very small.
Yes.
More important maybe is bamboo is fodder, so you could help that aspect and help farmers with fodder. But it is again, basically explaining to an agricultural minister that it has some other values and economically it's a very interesting crop. So I think it's thinking about which ones. The ones that we are focusing on at the moment is the people responsible for climate change. Because I think, again, for them, this is a real opportunity, a nature-based solution that can help with climate action. It can help you with mitigation because bamboo absorbs CO2 like no other plant. It
Yes.
grows very fast. It's very versatile. So, depending on the species, you have a really good natural way of absorbing CO2.
Yes.
But it also works on the other side with mitigation. Again, it's this whole aspect of how local people can use bamboo to survive in times of hardship. When other crops might actually fail due to
Yes.
drought or due
Yes.
to flooding, the bamboo will most likely survive. It's a very resilient plant. And I remember talking with a farmer in Vietnam once, a young lady who said, for me, it's my bank account. She said, if I need money to buy shoes, I cut a few poles of bamboo, I take them to the market. And that gives me enough money to actually buy something. So I say, it depends who you talk to. But it comes back to your question about myths, as it were. There's a lot of people who don't see the value yet. It's
Yes.
raising awareness.
Also shifting focus to the European Bamboo Expo, which is this brilliant event that's bringing together industry leaders, policymakers, journalists, and innovators in the bamboo space. What are the key outcomes or collaborations that you hope we could see from an event like this, and how can it really drive bamboo's global growth and the impact?
It is the third time that we're having this expo this year.
Yes.
And I think the first one was quite small. The second one last year was already bigger. I think this one is going to be even bigger.
Absolutely.
Again, it is finding more interest among different communities in Europe. I think the aim of the expo is, on the one hand, learning, basically exchange information and people to go to actually find out more about bamboo. It's building partnerships, but it's also very much looking at that industrial aspect. We hope that the expo will, and maybe this year it might not be totally possible, but we will have more, that the expo will become some kind of a place where the industry will get together. And again, we're talking about the industry of plantation. So basically people that grow bamboo. And I say we're doing this through a company in the Netherlands, but we're growing it in the south. I know there's growing bamboo in Italy. There are people in France. There are a lot of farmers that have reached out to us because they're interested. So individual farmers. So you have that part. Then, of course, there is the sort of intermediate. How can you then split the bamboo? How can you treat the bamboo? What can you do with the bamboo fiber? And then there is the final product manufacturing, which, again, doesn't really happen that much yet, but there is an interest. So there are a few companies that are already working in this field, and we hope to bring them together and hopefully create new industry. So that's the aim really of the expo, bringing people together to promote bamboo, particularly in Europe. But while it's the European Bamboo Expo, we are bringing people from outside as well, because we need the experience from other parts of the world in order to sort of fuel the excitement in Europe.
I think we need different people from different walks of life who are really either passionate about bamboo or really understand and see the potential in bamboo, or just people who want to understand bamboo in general. I think we need all of these people in one room to really spark the right conversation and spread more awareness. Talking about that, I have one last question for you. I want to know, what do you think is bamboo's role in a climate resilient future? And what are the steps that we need to take today to really push bamboo for its role in sustainability and climate action?
The first thing is we need to plant more. As simple as that. There aren't many countries that are planting bamboo. I mean, you've got an awful lot of natural bamboo in India. I think there are now also talks about planting, but it's early days. China says got a lot of planted bamboo. Other Asian countries, again, are not really planting yet.
Yes.
If I go to Latin America, again, it's mainly natural bamboo. I think the idea of plantations is not a big thing there either. Africa definitely is not planting bamboo, and they should. We are trying to promote it in Europe as well. I mean, at the moment, I guess the average, well, not the average, but the estimate of the total global acreage of bamboo is about 50 million hectares. It's a difficult one because it's a figure that is basically coming from the FAO, and FAO admits that some countries that have bamboo haven't actually given the details. So I think the official figure is in the 40s, but we think there's more. It should be more than that. 50 million hectares sounds a lot, but we want more than that. So that's the key, the first thing, I guess. Plant more bamboo. And I think then it is this question of awareness raising to basically make people aware, make people realize the opportunities there are. And as I said, the opportunities are, on the one hand, how can you work with communities to use bamboo for land restoration, for erosion control, for basically some of the aspects that climate change will give us, and provide a source of local income and local products and local resources for use, and then take that one step further to see what we can do industrially. And I think one aspect that we haven't really talked about, but it is important, I mentioned it earlier, is this ability of bamboo to sequester CO2, to suck up the CO2 from the air.
Yes.
It's a very effective tool. And in Europe, you are now able to actually get carbon credits. Whilst I don't think you should plant bamboo for the carbon credits, I think that's wrong. But if you plant bamboo, a farmer can get credits to sort of bridge the gap almost between the planting and the harvest. Because the problem is, of course, you have to wait maybe 5 years or so before you really can start cutting. What does a farmer get in those 5 years? Now, if he got, some money for planting the bamboo, which is apparently what is happening in the Netherlands now, that the government is actually giving you funding to plant bamboo for construction. So you get, as a farmer, some money up front to plant bamboo, which allows you to say, okay, I plant it, I look after it, and I know I'm not going to get much of a return in the next few years, but in 5-6 years, I'm going to be able to get an annual return. And that's, again, the great thing, because it's grass, you can cut part of it, it grows back, and that can go on for years and years and years.
Absolutely.
So once you start harvesting, it's an incredibly sustainable crop.
But do you think planting or growing bamboo for carbon credits can lead to greenwashing or misleading claims?
Yes, definitely. And that's why I said, I think to plant bamboo just for the economic benefit, as it were, just for the carbon credits, that's wrong. But to say, okay, I plant bamboo for land restoration, for example. And again, it's something that is often overlooked, but the root systems of bamboo are so strong that it can actually hold soil in place. And bamboo, through its leaf fall, can help you to restore degraded land. Again, we had, when I say we, IMBA worked with a local NGO in central India, where there was land that had been completely degraded because of brick making.
Yes.
They planted bamboo, and after a few years, the leaf fall from the bamboo started to create an organic layer that allowed other plants to grow. And after about 10 years, it's now an agricultural community again. So that aspect of land restoration is really important. So if you plant bamboo for land restoration and for basically building materials, whatever, on top of that, you get the carbon credits. That is how it should be. So I think the reason for planting bamboo should be environmental or economic.
Yes.
The carbon credits is a added benefit, and it can help you in that interim period.
I get a lot of queries from farmers, from young entrepreneurs who want to maybe start businesses in this space. What is your message to people who want to start their sustainability journey with bamboo?
That's a very interesting question. You need some money to do it. So really, it's a question of where can you find the finance? And again, as I said earlier, if you are lucky enough that you are in a country where you could get the carbon credits, that could pay for the start. But I know not all countries are yet in a position to provide those carbon credits. The alternative, of course, is to find another form of investment. And I guess that is a question of, talking with people that have those resources, the financial resources, and convince them that this is worth investing in, it's worth doing. It comes back again to what you said earlier about raising awareness and explaining to people what the opportunities are. We actually managed to get a lot of interest from people who see the point of growing bamboo in Europe. And I think, again, because if you're talking about India, where bamboo is much more a common plant, I would say a plant people know about. I guess there are definitely opportunities to get the funding to start that enterprise. And as with always with a startup, if you can get through the first years, then it becomes easier and easier. Certainly, growing bamboo, one of the first things you can start doing is to say, cleaning up the stems, so you end up with a lot of biomass, which could be fodder. It could actually be biomass that can be used. The shoots are starting to come through faster than the actual poles. So early on already, you can start selling shoots to restaurants and chefs. And this is certainly something we find in Europe. So there are ways that you can start making money fairly soon. But of course, to really get a return on your investment, you have to wait a few years. And I say that either means you've got to find an investment partner that is willing to support you, or find the carbon credits to carry you through that period.
I agree with you that even in a lot of states in India, people have grown up around bamboo, but they still don't understand its potential, which is exactly why we're trying to bring out interesting stories through our show and educate more and more people, not just in India, but across the world. Thank you so much, Hans, for taking out time and speaking to me today. It's this one resource that I'm really passionate about, and any conversation around bamboo is always interesting. And given your experience and your inspiring experience in this space, I think there's a lot that we learned today, and I'd love to share this with everybody.
Very happy to do so, Navya. It's been great. Very nice talking to you. And I think your show is a great show. It's one way to really raise awareness, and certainly happy if I can help with that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
We truly enjoyed this conversation and hope you did too. One thing is clear, bamboo isn't just an alternative. It's a game-changing opportunity. From construction to fashion, packaging to energy, its potential is vast. But how far can bamboo really go? We'll be following its journey closely at the European Bamboo Expo 2025, bringing you exclusive insights, innovations, and stories from the forefront of this green revolution. Stay tuned for our coverage, and let's keep the conversation going. And tell me, what excites you the most about bamboo's future? Share your thoughts in the comments.